Well, welcome to the Business Spotlight series. My name is Tanner O'Brien. I'm a senior partner here at Action Coach in Central Texas. Today, I'm sitting down with Stephen Puri, who is the CEO and founder of the Sukha Company. So excited to be chatting, having some conversation about this crazy thing called entrepreneurship and business ownership and all the other fun things that come along with the journey of what this looks like today. So, Stephen, thank you so much. Excited to jump in. Let's just start with a little bit of background. Tell us like 10,000 foot view of who you are and tell us about the Sukha Company.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Tanner. I just want to thank the Academy, all the other nominees. Was a software engineer at IBM when I was in college, fell into film because I knew computer programming and knew software development. And I also was in Los Angeles at USC. Ended up getting deeply into film, became a studio executive, worked at DreamWorks, was a vice president at Fox, did that, and then got back into tech, got back into founding my own company as opposed to working on large movies. Worked on like Star Trek 11, Transformers 1 and 2, Eagle Eye, Die Hard 5, stuff like that, right? And then got back into this a couple years ago, found out I had ADHD, which makes it both hard to focus and completely understandable why I'm easily distracted. And I try to multitask. I try to like do a lot of things because I'm drawn to that. And I created something for that, which is the Sukha Company. And Sukha means happiness in Sanskrit. It is the kind of happiness that is like deep, fulfilling happiness. It's not like, oh, delicious hot fudge sundae. It's more like a non-transient happiness, like I'm in my lane, doing the thing I'm meant to do. I'm great at it. This is fun.
Very cool. So quite the journey going from tech to film and then back to kind of tech and
Yep.
founding company. Um, Maybe let's start by just going a little bit deeper on that journey. What ultimately drew you to getting into the film industry for a bit, and then what were some of the key points that pulled you back into now forming your company?
You know what? I was a Watson Scholar, an IBM Watson Scholar in college, which kind of guarantees you a job and they pay you to go to college. It's very generous. And I chose to go to USC because they had a program in broadcasting that was interesting to me. And I had previously in high school done a TV show for Channel 5 in DC. And we were the top rated youth show in the DC Baltimore market. So I had this interest in like, oh, I like this thing of being a newscaster on television, even on this youth show, it was like a great opportunity to be out there. And USC said, come out here and do this, and you can pursue software, stuff on the side. And going to USC, tons of my friends were in this cinema TV school. So of course you end up hanging out, talking, learning about film. By junior year, I was interning at a film company, got out of school, worked at a bunch of companies. Was at Sony, was at Paramount, was at DreamWorks, and then Fox. And then my pivot out of film was when I was at Fox, every one of my movies that was going to go, there's like a greenlit movie, was a sequel. And it's really not the kind of thing you go, oh, someday I'm going to tell my children, Daddy made Die Hard 5. You know what I mean? You just don't envision that. You're like, it got made. It wasn't very good. It was made for a lot of reasons. Not all of them had to do with the script being readable. And that for me was a moment of like, I think I want to do something where I have more ability to address a problem directly, say, this is what I want to do. I have more ability to fall flat on my face if I screw up, but also more ability to feel good about the success of like, oh, wow, we tried that and it worked. Or we tried something, it didn't work. We iterated, we tried the second thing and that worked. That to me was way more exciting. And that was the thing of like, okay, let's go do a tech company. Because I had one exit of a tech company in my 20s. And then coming back to it later, it was like, okay, I kind of remember those moves from playing ball in college. Now I got it back on the court in middle age and be like, okay, how are we doing this? So that was kind of like the pivots for me.
Very cool. I love that. So I think you mentioned right at the start of jumping on the call here, smaller startup, kind of still
Yep.
in that growth phase. But tell us maybe a little bit more about kind of where you're at in your growth cycle with the company, and kind of where you see at least the next year or so, and kind of where you at in the overall phase of building the company.
You know what it is? We recently figured out our product market fit. And for us, we stumbled around in the woods for a little while because obviously, my having ADHD early on, undiagnosed, and then later, like having some friends tell me, you should go get diagnosed, and being like, oh, you were right. I do have ADHD. That explains a lot. So those early days of building tools that were like how to focus, how to be more productive, they led me to the idea that's taking off. And that idea is, if there is a fundamental tension right now, there's a tug of war going on in that work is being reinvented, right? The work of 10, 20 years ago, like, hey, my dad gets in the car and he drives to an office where he sits with a whole bunch of guys and they work together and drive home at night, that sort of thing. Like, that's been ripped apart. And now you have this tug of war between employers that are like, hey, come back to the office. And you have workers who are like, actually, I'm enjoying being at home and saving the commute and all that. And to be very blunt, the tension in that rope is employers, whether it's Benioff, Zuckerberg, Musk, whatever you want to say, the tension on that rope is the employer is going, you're not working hard enough. I don't know if you're working, right? I want you to be in here, and I'll talk about, collaboration and off. I'll use all the pretty terms for it. But the deep thing that I wish I could say is like, I wonder if you're baking bread while you should actually be doing work for me, right? And on the other side, the tension on the rope is employees, workers saying, actually, my quality of life is so much better. And if you would trust me to get the work done, yes, maybe I do enjoy being able to pick up my kids at 3 o'clock from school, which I couldn't do if I were in the office. But by the same token, after dinner, when they're in bed, maybe I'll kick in another hour or two and it's quiet out. And that is what we solve, because we found the employers, if they actually feel the employees are delivering, suddenly some of that rope gets a little slack. They're like, oh, okay, this is cool. This is what I need. I'm getting it. And the employees are feeling engaged in the team, and they're actually being more productive, which makes them feel happy, which is the root of high performance. And there's a great study by Oxford University in conjunction with British Telecom. There's another one at the University of Warwick that really talk about how, like, when you feel like you're in your lane, you're doing something meaningful and you're good at it, that is the foundation for you to be a high performer in that area. And that ultimately is what a person wants, and then is also what an employer wants. And we only recently found that, and that's been a huge growth key for us.
Very cool. So maybe walk us a little bit deeper on what does that solution look like? How do you go about kind of solving the
Super
challenge?
simple. It's basically, we wanted to invent the future of work, which is like an online WeWork. By that, I mean, if you were in a world where you had a co-sharing office, right? You went to a Tanner, you'd be like, hey, I expect to get there. And my expectation is you'll have power, you'll have water, you'll have desks, you'll have whiteboards with markers, there'll be a break room with snacks. Right? You have expectations of a physical WeWork, right? And there's a sense of community about being there, which is a lot what the co-working spaces have sold, right? So we thought, what is that space if it were virtual? Obviously, it's not markers and a beer keg and whiteboard. It's rather, what are the tools you need to be super productive, whether you are in an office where some people are like, there are 10 people in an office, used to have 50. Some people are hybrid. Hey, then there are 3 days and I'm here 2 days at home. Some days are completely digitally nomadic or at home, right? So we said, you know what? There are a lot of smart books on productivity. We don't have to try and reinvent the wheel, So we read the Flows and the Atomic Habits and the Deep Works and all the Ryan Holidays. Like, there are a lot of smart people who have written about this. It is interesting when you look at those, they're very much the same book. They have their own words to sell you their book and their framework, but it is simple principles around, hey man, before you start, lay out your tasks, prioritize them, start with your most important thing. Time box, give yourself half an hour, magically in half an hour, you get it done. If you don't, it just kind of like bleeds, right? Monotask, don't jump around. Guilty. I used to be so guilty of that, right? So the thing that it does is, when you get into our platform, the Sukha, it's literally a site that right when you start work in the morning, you hit play on it, plays beautiful focus music for you, all designed to scientific best practices, 60 to 90 beats per minute, ambient, background, certain key signatures, all that. You can choose 150 hours of different music, different playlists, right? You can listen to rain if you want. You can listen to binaural beats, white noise, pink noise, brown noise, whatever your jam is, right? Your computer's in do not disturb. And you have an AI coach, which is kind of the thing people have been talking about a bunch. Is we've had 100, probably more than 100 now, people raise their hands and be like, could I be the voice that helps people be on track during the day? We have big engineering influencers who do it. We've got productivity influencers. We have near AL who wrote the books on Hooked and Indistractable. We've got like Kent C. Dodds, ADHD coaches, some of whom are my friends now. And that process of being in like an online WeWork where it's like there's music, there's a task list, there's a calendar, there's a timer, like if you do Pomodoros, and there's a coach who greets you. It's like, hey, Tanner, let's have a great session today. You open up Twitter. Tanner, do you really need to be in Twitter at this moment? You're like, whoops, no, I don't. And then result is people work more quickly than they thought they would. They finish the work in 48% less time than they thought they needed. So in other words, about twice as fast. There's no magic. It's just we help you stay on track. And 92% of them self-report that they're happier. And that's solely because when you look up at 3:00, you can feel, where did the day go? I didn't get my important stuff done. I feel terrible. I'm down on myself. Or you can feel like I'm done for the day. Like I crushed it. I feel great. And that's what we do. We deliver that feeling of happiness, that feeling of like 3:00, this is awesome. I am great at this, as opposed to where did the day go?
That is so cool. I absolutely love
It's
it.
fun.
I'm curious. So when you look at continuing to grow the business, do you see more of a focus on going after enterprise clients where they can then deploy this for all of their team members, or do you see this more as being direct to the consumer that's going to use it, and that being kind of the primary channel to go after?
Tana, I appreciate that question because it's a very smart one. It also tees up a great thing for me to talk about. So thank you. We started out completely B2C. A lot of people who are actually, hands-on keys, they're like, this is awesome. Engineers, software developers, code monkeys like me, right? Designers, authors, people who have to be there doing that. That was cool. Recently, we've had incoming calls from people who are like engineering managers or HR people saying, hey, you know what? 4 of my people use this. I checked it out. Can I get a site license, or can I get 10 licenses, something like that, to try it out with my engineering team or try it out with my design department? So that's something we're exploring now. I don't have a lot of experience doing that. So it's been an interesting process of like, hey, to whom can I speak and ask them like, how exactly do you want this to work? I'm flexible. We're flattered people are calling. And I think that's a big thing for us. But we're just starting to explore it now.
Oh, that is so cool. Because my natural next question is, I always love to ask about marketing, and that's kind of leads us to it. Not sure if it's a point where kind of all the details of where things are going to go yet. But when you look at marketing or just getting the word out there about this, what has been the philosophy? Where do you see that philosophy changing if you start kind of this pivot to maybe enterprise clients and getting in front of different types of folks that can buy multiple licenses versus just one?
It's a great question. Getting here, obviously, with the B2C thing, we tried a lot of different channels. I'll tell you, some were just stupid how dumb we were. Like we did Facebook ads and TikTok ads and stuff like that. Because we're like, all these people are on there complaining about how they can't focus, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed out. The quality of traffic was abysmal. We got people clicking, and it was just like people who were literally like looky-loos that weren't solving anything. They're just like, I'll just explore this for like 24 hours and gone, right? So it's terrible, really bad waste of money. In terms of going forward, that's something that I'm exploring now of like, what is the most credible way to be introduced to someone who controls that budget, which very often in an organization is going to be a wellness budget, an education budget, an employee development budget. And in some organizations, that's held at the HR level, where it's like, okay, we have 1,000 people, we allocate $50 a head per year, whatever that is, you know what I mean? And we are holding the purse strings. Other times it's delegated to like the manager level. So you have engineering manager with 15 people working for him or her. And then they're like, oh, well, I have some ability to do, this on my own. Let's try this thing. So I'm learning right now, what's the best way to get in touch with them that's credible. It doesn't seem like, hey man, cold outreach, you're probably a spammer from, Botswana trying to transfer Bitcoin to a Nigerian prince or something. I'm just saying, because I tried that business, it didn't work. I was like, oh, it sounded so good in the seminar. Tony Robbins is like Bitcoin. I was like, oh.
I love that. Well, I want to take a step back. So you mentioned doing Facebook ads and knowing that that was something that didn't work for you. And
Yep.
I always love to kind of look at the lessons learned from things that for you didn't work. Now, every industry is a little bit different, every business is a little bit
Mhm.
different. But you mentioned something interesting there, which was you were getting the clicks, you were getting traffic from it, but it
Mhm.
wasn't the right kind of traffic. And
Yep.
people were jumping on and then deciding wasn't for them after 24 hours, etc. Um, Walk me through kind of how you tracked that and why that was so important for you to be able to make the determination this is something that's not working the way we want it to.
You know what? A good friend who runs a digital agency said, "Hey, you know what? Let me throw you a favor. Why don't you work with my guy? Like, I got a guy who's really smart, really nice, and indeed, still love the guy, even though this didn't work. I do think he's very talented. Um, the thing that we did is we experimented with, it's a multivariable equation. It's like the creative against the audience at the day and time. Like there are so many pieces of that where you're like, it didn't multiply out to one, but I'm not sure which variable exactly was the weak one, or if there are multiple variables that are weak. So what I can tell you is this, because I'm not brilliant, but I just know what happened is we tried a bunch of different creatives so we could kind of measure what creatives seemed to get the best response. We tried lookalikes from our current, membership. We tried, hypotheses that we had around productivity influencers and stuff like that. And that didn't seem to make a huge difference. The real thing was this is we saw tiers of actual engagement. I will say we tried Google search ads, and that was a better quality traffic than Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, right? The meta companies in Instagram
Mm-hmm.
and TikTok. And my hypothesis around that was if you actually are Googling looking for a productivity app or a focus app, your intent might be higher than someone who sees an ad is like, oh yeah, I feel overwhelmed or I'm stressed out. I'll, click that. So that was interesting to see. Um, the TikTok were the cheapest, so we got a volume, but the highest bouncer in a website. Like if you came with intent, we converted almost 30% of you to sign up, right? So we're pretty happy with that. We're like, we're not going to get to 80%, but 30% conversion on the landing page. Okay. And we're very lucky that Yuri Tiemann, who is the head of growth at Grammarly for 9 years, he's one of our advisors. He's like, let me give you some advice here. Amazing advice. So the conversion we were okay with. But the meta stuff and the TikTok stuff, a lot of it was just looky loos. People who knew they wanted kind of to solve a problem ish, but not really put the like. I want to lose weight, really, because we're having this conversation at McDonald's. I'm not really believing you a lot.
Ah, man, this is such a powerful lesson. I'm just like, quick pause on this for anyone that is watching this. Pause, go back, listen to it because it's really the power of understanding data behind your marketing, and with that intent there and understanding those pieces makes a
Yep.
massive difference in the effectiveness on. I think half my marketing is working. I just don't know which half.
Mm-hmm.
Having this data and understanding that allows you to kind of start making different decisions. So I appreciate you letting me go a little bit deeper on that because I think that
Yep.
is a fantastic point for many business leaders out there that are really good at business, but are still kind of fumbling through or learning that process of what marketing can look like. So I
Yes.
appreciate
And
that.
you follow it all the way through the funnel because it's very easy for the agency to be like, we ran this many ads, it got this many impressions, it got this many clicks on the website, it got this many conversions and signups. But then you really need to look like, what did those people do when they sign up? We found the cohorts that came from TikTok, they barely used our app. It was just kind of that thing of like, I signed up for Jenny Craig, I never really went or something. You know what I mean? So following it all the way through to like, how long do we retain them? What did they do? How long did they use? How many minutes did they use the app? That's what told us like it's like throwing money in the wind.
Have you, out of curiosity, have you found kind of the that inflection point where they hit a certain number of minutes within the app and then the retention rate skyrockets from there? Is there a point that you've noticed?
That is very smart question. Everyone references the 7 friends in 10 days, right? So for us, it's number of minutes that they were in session, which usually correlates to multiple sessions. But we found that there is a very steep drop off. If you, let me back up. There's a lot of research around flow states, right? And people are starting to become much more sensitive to biohacking and understanding sort of neurologically what we do. So the notion of flow state, there's some agreement that you don't get into a flow state after 15 minutes, right? It takes you a while to drop in, and then you can be there. And you hear the stories of Picasso painting all night and forgetting to go to the bathroom or eat, or Michael Jordan talking about it's just me and the ball. Like he's like, when I get into that state, there aren't even defenders or a scoreboard or stance. It's just me and the ball, right? And those flow state things are amazing when you get into them. Part of why we talk about Sukha being happiness, right? It's like that, I'm good at this. This is great. And it generally takes 20 to 30 minutes to get into flow. And we find is if you don't get that feeling of dropping in where you're like surrounded by music, we block all your notifications, you're like in the zone, that you'll bounce. But if we can keep you there for that long, retention goes through the roof.
It's phenomenal. So where do things go from here? When you look at the next 3 to 5 years for the business, what are you most excited about? Where do you see things going? I know we didn't get deep into kind of what your current role in the business is, but how does your role
I'm
change
boring. Don't
within
worry
it?
about me.
But yeah, what do you see for the next 3 to 5 years? Like what's upcoming? What's exciting?
So I will tell you with the preface that, of course, tell God your plan so she can laugh, right? So I'll tell you what I project, and I'm sure when we speak in 3 years or 5 years, it'll be very different. But the growth of this as a future of work, like this is my online office that goes with me everywhere, is what I'm most excited about. The communities where in the group chat, people are talking to each other and someone's like, I've never tried a pomodoro before, but I keep hearing about it. Does anyone do it? And then like 3 people weigh in, they're like, oh yeah, I do it. Let me tell you how I adapted it to me. And it gives people guidance in that. You can, in the group chat, by the way, you can share things you finished. Like if you finish like, hey, I launched my website, your coach might be like, oh, Tanner, that's awesome. Why don't you share the URL? And you drop the URL in there and suddenly like 50 people go check it out. And you're like, this is cool. This is community. I'm not in this alone. And I think if people can find a sense of like, I'm not in this alone, like there's a supportive community around me, those feelings of overwhelm and procrastination, this really helps me. Like I just hit play, kind of the music starts, I like ease into it, because I have that. I have that feeling of just like, where do I start some days? Or it's like being an entrepreneur, you have 4,000 things you need to do, another 6,000 you should do, stuff like that. And just sometimes it's that, just let me get in the pool. Like that would be an amazing place to be. When people say 3 to 5 years, they're usually talking about like, okay, how many members will you have? What are your projections? Will you have 17,000 members tomorrow morning, and 2 billion by, I don't know. A lot of it is our coaches that have found this. They use it with their members. Some are private. You can't search for them. They have paying clients that, pay them privately, and some are public. But I hope we just keep attracting a certain kind of coach. It's like, hey man, I've got 100,000, followers that I want to provide this service to. And that makes me feel great. That's the biggest joy, is when you suddenly see like this whole community come together. You're like, we've launched another one.
That is fantastic. So I know we've covered a ton of ground, and I want to be respectful of time. So I've got a couple rapid fire questions. I'd love to kind of just pull out some additional nuggets for the audience.
Do it.
So I've got 4 of them in total. The first one is, when you look at kind of your journey overall, not just for the Sukha Company, but kind of everything, from the start all the way to today, what would you say for you is your key to success?
Oh, my friends. 100%. My life has been a series of lucky breaks, like not by design, not by being smart, but literally just I've got amazing friends. And it's always been a thing of like, oh man, you should know Tanner. Like, let me introduce you guys. And then you and I ended up making a company together or something. So 100% my friends.
That's awesome. If you could give just one piece of advice to other entrepreneurs out there, what piece of advice would you want to give them?
The road is long. You see the same people. And even when you have failures, it's like the people you saw on the way up, you see on the way down, and you go back up and you see, and it's just like, remember that all these relationships, you'll meet the same people over and over and over. And if someone's mean to you or someone's dismissive of you, it may not be about you. Sometimes it's really hard. Like I remember when I raised money the first time, I was like, oh, this is really personal. And then later, you understand like, oh, well, that fund had kind of deployed everything already. So they couldn't even have said yes and and this other thing. And like you realize so little of it is actually about you, that you become a little more like water for ducks back. And you're just like, hey man, that guy was a dick. Maybe he had a bad morning with his wife or his boyfriend. You just don't know.
It is fantastic advice. Book recommendation. What's one book that either you're currently reading, you've read most recently, that you would recommend to the audience?
Best book I would recommend to anyone is The Lessons of History by Will and Ariel Durant. They wrote the history of civilization, spent their lifetime doing that. I do not recommend to anyone reading, all 4 billion pages of that. But at the end, they wrote this book that's like the distillate of what they realized studying the history of civilization. And it's incredibly readable. And it is fascinating. It is human nature laid out by people who watched, who read, and wrote about the civilization that we live in. So, yeah, lessons of history.
Very cool. That is going on my reading list, which
You'll
tends
love
to be
it.
getting longer and longer by the day, but I'm excited. Final rapid fire question. Excuse me. And this one's just kind of fun. If you could choose just one area in your business, and you only get to choose one,
Mhm.
you could sprinkle some magic dust on it and wake up tomorrow, it's 10 times better than it is today. Where would you choose to put that magic dust?
All of our magic has come from referrals. So I would just double and triple and 10x down on referrals. There is nothing as valuable as like Tanner telling Steven, oh, dude, I use this and it's cool. You got to try it. There is no ad, no cold email, no DM, no tweet that is worth going, hey, my brother liked this. And he told Tanner and Tanner told me, it's the best. So I would just 10x referrals from people.
Fantastic. So before we get to the final question that I love to wrap up on for all of these conversations, where for the audience can they go for more information if they want to check out the work that you're doing, if they want to see all the things for the Sukha Company, if they want to try it themselves, where can we advise them to go for more information?
Love you asking that. The website has a lot of information. So you can go to the Sukha, which is TheSukha.co for company. So thesukha.co. And if you want to sign up, bam, there's a button there, sign up. If you want to read more and have the long marketing site with like all the features and all the stuff, there's a little button there that says learn more. You can click that and you get the really long site that'll tell you everything, the pricing and all the things you want. And if anyone is like, I just want to speak to Steven, I just want to understand how this will work for me or for my team, they can email me. My email address is not a secret. It is Steven, Steven, at the Sukha, Sukha.co.
Excellent. I will make sure to put all of that in the video description below. So as soon as we wrap up, for those that are watching, make sure you go click the links. Shoot Steven an email. Just say, "Hey, saw you on the Business Spotlight. Looks
There you
amazing. Can't wait
go.
to try it." Make sure you take the time to go do that because this, that's what's really fun about these things is
Yeah.
getting people together in community and having conversations. So make those connections there. Steven, as we wrap up, final question I've got for you today: What
You had a
is
lot of
most
final questions. You're good.
yeah, I know, right? What is most inspiring to you today?
The thought of having children and telling them what I did, that definitely affects what I do now. And I was not kidding about the Die Hard 5 thing. That for me was like straw that broke the camel's back. Where I was like, there's no world I would tell my child, Daddy made Die Hard 5. It's awful, right? But there is a world which I'm like, yeah, Daddy kind of helped create this new version of work for people. And it's delightful and fun. And people are like less stressed out and less overwhelmed. Absolutely. Telling my kids that, hell yeah.
I'm inspired just by hearing that. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Um, Stephen, I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time to share a little bit of your journey. Tell us a little bit more about the amazing things that you're working on, you're creating, you're continuing to build for this future of work. It's just been a pleasure to have you here today, and I want to say thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. And I hope I can be helpful.